Same language, threats, loud comments, or excessive noise from the floor. Disrupted person will be asked to leave the meeting room. In accordance with Tennessee Code annotated 39-17-306, any person who acts to prevent, obstruct, or interfere with any lawful meeting of the CMCSS school board by physical action or verbal utterance shall be warned by the chair, vice chair, board attorney to discontinue those actions. Law enforcement may lawfully remove any person from the meeting who refused to cease his or her acts of preventing, obstructing, or interfering with any such meeting. Each speaker will have 5 minutes. I'm asking you to start your closing no later than 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Because at the end of 5 minutes, we're going to call the next speaker. First speaker is Mr. Lenoir Pressborn. Please, and Ms. Stephanie Outlaw, be prepared. I guess Mr. Lenoir is not here, so Stephanie Outlaw.
Good evening, Board. I'm Stephanie Outlaw, Clarksville Montgomery County Education Association. I wish that I was here to discuss ways that we can support current CMCSS teachers and students instead of a vote that will take place later this month regarding a charter school that will do the opposite for the majority of us. American Classical Academy Montgomery will take public dollars from our current public schools that serve the vast majority of our student population in Clarksville Montgomery County without the same accountability. It even has a waiver that states that it does not have the same accountability that Clarksville Montgomery County schools currently do. I am completely against giving public money to a private organization not bound by the same laws of accountability as current public schools. There are concerns from SPED teachers who have looked at the application section for identifying special populations and avoiding misidentification or over-identification. The application refers to a quote-unquote firm belief in ability grouping for literacy and math instruction. How will American Classical Academy Montgomery ensure that their ability grouping practices do not result in substantially disproportionate representation by one race or minority group in their lowest groups per Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964? Will grade levels be ability grouped, or will ability grouping take place within individual classrooms? What data will be used to determine ability levels and small group or classroom placement? The charter school's ability grouping model of Tier 1 instruction states on page 89 of their application that Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions will occur within the ability-based small groups during the 120 minutes of literacy instruction as well as during the 80 minutes of numeracy instruction in Tier 1. Based upon the information, students identified as having skill deficits, placing them in Tiers 2 or 3 of the RTI-2 framework, will not receive the 30 minutes for Tier 2 or the 45 minutes for Tier 3 of evidence-based intervention per day, in addition to their Tier 1 literacy and numeracy instructional minutes. How will the American Classical ensure that students are not ultimately misclassified as being disabled and that misclassification does not result in students being inappropriately placed in special education programs? The Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights places the responsibility for preventing this from happening on the district. What measures will be taken to allow the district the appropriate access to the data used for ability groupings, as well as the data used for identifying students for tiered interventions and the documentation that is necessary to ensure that these interventions are occurring with fidelity prior to referral for a special education evaluation? These are legitimate concerns by current SPED teachers of our district. Furthermore, I do not know why a public school board would consider a charter school that uses a curriculum by an organization whose president slandered public school teachers. We should stand together against this type of attack on our teachers instead of supporting that organization. I am a real member of this community who has looked into the American Classical Academy Montgomery's application, and I have real concerns that deserve professional consideration from my school board. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Julie Discard, Mr. Demetrius Jacob. Ms. Discard here? What about Mr. Demetrius? Jerry, Brittany, you next.
Good evening. I am Dr. Demetrius Jaggers, and I have the privilege of being a member of this community, but also a parent, as well as an advocate for public education. I think the arguments for why charter schools are not good for public schools are very much well documented. They take funding away from schools who are already underfunded. And they operate under different rules and regulations than our public schools. I believe in public schools, and I understand the challenges that public schools face in 2023. And I also understand that there are parents in our community and in other parts of this country who are seeking other educational options beyond public schools because of some of these challenges. However, I will say that when we are considering the charter application, there are very real concerns that I see personally when it comes to American Classical Academy Montgomery. First, they claim to be completely independent of Hillsdale College. However, the curriculum that the American Classical Academy Montgomery will use is American Classical Education. It is implemented and governed by Hillsdale College. On their website, to promote the American Classical Education curriculum, they reference, and I quote, how to start a Hillsdale College member school. Hillsdale College will have considerable influence on what this school will look like in our community and how students in our community will be educated. If there was no influence or oversight from Hillsdale College, I doubt that there would be representatives here in this room today. As a member school of the charter group for Hillsdale College, they state that ACA Montgomery would receive resources and support for startup, consulting, and other resources, for marketing, branding, and PR resources, for headmaster pipeline and vetting, board training and support, teacher training and support, principal training and support, as well as focus groups hosted at Hillsdale College. Hillsdale College is one of the most conservative and well-documented schools that have intentionally challenged real history in America. It has mischaracterized the civil rights movement of the 1960s, as well as current civil rights movements that are happening in order to make sure that we indeed have a equitable and inclusive country. Hillsdale College does not accept federal funding because it does not want to be transparent about how it abides by or implements practices as it relates to diversity, equity, and inclusion. The American Classical Education prides itself on providing the education that the American founders received. The American founders who were not only slave owners themselves, but also who openly, publicly were pro-slavery. I don't know about you all, but I don't know that that's the type of education I want any of the folks in our community to have, especially in a community that is over 40% people of color. In a school district where 42+% of students identify as students of color. We may not be able to prevent charters from applying to be here, but I think in this case, we will be wise to pay attention to the writing on the wall as it relates to what the American Classical Education curriculum is about and what the American Classical Academy Montgomery plans to do with the resources that they'll get from our community and the students that they will have access to. Thank you.
Mr. Jerry Britton. Monica Meeks.
Hello, everyone. The last time I spoke before the school board, someone from Freedom Fighter Collective contacted my place of employment. Let me provide you with a disclaimer right now. I'm not speaking for the Army. I'm not speaking for any nonprofit organization for which I am affiliated. I am not speaking for my current employer. These are my concerns as a concerned citizen. You won't silence me. You do not intimidate or scare me. The American Classical Academy Montgomery explicitly states in its application that it will seek out organizers like Mosaic Church to increase awareness about its approach to education. The CMCSS Board of Education selected the review committee for charter schools. If there are any conflicts of interest within the review committee, the public should know about it. If any school board member has a conflict of interest, the public should know about it. I sent an email to the CMCSS attorney. I have not heard back from you yet on the conflict of interest. The agenda behind the charter school movement in Tennessee comes from religious zealots that think they can quicken the return of Jesus Christ by dismantling the public school system. They think they are the voice of God. This is about indoctrination and teaching children to hate the same people that you hate. The American Classical Academy Montgomery will use the American Classical Education K-12 curriculum developed by Hillsdale College. Hillsdale College violates the standards of diversity regularly. They do not want to discuss racism, racial inequity lies in our educational system. You do not want to discuss racism because it makes certain children feel bad. Why would you identify with the KKK and lynchings instead of identifying with John Brown and the abolitionists? It should not be easy to identify with Nathan Bedford Forrester, the founder of the Ku Klux Klan, than it is to identify with William Lloyd Garrison. We do not need any more whitewashed American history. The patriotic perspective should include the Red Summer of 1919, when white mobs lynched 43 black World War I veterans. Or does that not meet the Hillsdale false narrative of patriotism? Loving a country that rewards your faithful service by lynching. Pay attention to what is happening with our state legislators. HB 1214 state-running school boards permits charter school organizations to open boarding schools for at-risk students with disabilities. At risk, according to Representative White, homeless, foster, free and reduced, economically disadvantaged, abused, neglected, and a lot of things our DCS has to deal with. Make that make sense. Our state government is once again overstepping its authority. Stop extending legal limits that do not belong to you. Do better. Be better because you know better.
Ms. Karen Neiman and Ms. Erica Outlaw, you're next.
Good evening. I'd like to warn anyone in the audience, especially with minor children, that I'm going to be saying some obscene words, pornographic things, and so you may want to leave the room. But I feel it's important, since this was a lesson that was given at Clarksville High School. These books are in the library and are quite obscene. And after the public was told that these books were not going to be read for the English honors class, there are students that are using them as a book report. So I was contacted a few weeks ago about an assignment that was given to Honors English about using banned books to tell our 14-year-olds that they should be student activists and fight against banned books. Here's directly from the lesson at the bottom of a book list of 34 books. Note, books are banned or challenged in school districts and communities around the county due to a variety of reasons, including racial issues, explicit language, sexual situations, violence, religious affiliations, and the list goes on. So the teachers knew there's a lot of sexual situations in these books they were asking 14-year-olds to read. In addition to that, it goes on that says, we, and they talk about the English 1 class, promote the freedom to choose or freedom to express one's opinion, even if that opinion might be considered unorthodox or unpopular. The English 1 teams hope, the entire team, hopes that that through this unit, students discover the detrimental impact a book being banned can have, and it creates a desire in students to combat all forms of censorship. Now, I didn't know Clarksville was supposed to be creating student activists in AP or honors English class. So we alerted, the principal sent out an email to the entire public, which read something like, well, actually I have it, so I will let you know. He sent it to me as well. Led parents to believe the purpose of the lesson for students to research and analyze books that had been banned, like The Catcher in the Rye and The Color Purple. In an attempt to provide a wider variety for options to students, a teacher copied and pasted some additional book titles banned from the American Library Association. These additional books were not vetted and it was not appropriate or permitted. After receiving the concern, I investigated and addressed it with the teachers, and the lesson has been removed and teachers will develop alternate lessons to teach with the aligned state standards. Not only was that not cut and pasted, because those books, The Color Purple, Catcher in the Rye, isn't even on the list. So there was never a short list. So I sent out an email praising the district that, oh, the principal right away took care of this. To which I got a response, not from the several parents that had contacted me originally and had complained, but from a woman that said, Karen, my son's in an honors English class, and you need to know they didn't change the lesson. Now they get to pick any book, including the books on the list. So I went to the other parents that had contacted me. They checked it. Sure enough, the teacher told the class, we took that book list down, you can pick any book and write a report on it. So I'm going to read from two of the books. This one is called The Glass Castle. Funny, my daughter-in-law was like, yeah, I read that. I go, really, in high school? She goes, no, I was 39. Mom, Uncle Stanley's behaving inappropriately, I said. Oh, you're probably imagining it, she said. He groped me and he's wanking off. Mom cocked her head and looked concerned. Poor Stanley, she said, he's so lonely. But it was gross. Mom asked me if I was okay. I shrugged and nodded. Well, there you go, she said. She said that sexual assault was a crime of perception. If you don't think you're hurt, then you aren't. What kind of message are we sending? Another one. This is another book in the libraries and on the list doing a book report. The confused mixture of his memories of Pauline and the doing of a wild forbidden thing excited him, and a bolt of desire ran down his genitals, giving it length and softening the lips of his anus. Surrounding all of this lust was a border of politeness. He wanted to fuck her tenderly, but the tenderness would not hold. The tightness of her vagina was more than he could bear. His soul seemed to slip down to his guts and fly out into her. And the gigantic thrust he made into her then provoked the only sound she made. I'll stop there, but I could go on and on and on. There's a problem with pornography in this district. There's a problem. Someone isn't telling the truth when they said there would be a new lesson.
Your time is up.
Thank you.
Eric Alpha.
Sorry. Oh, you're fine.
Good evening, thank you for your time. And I just want to say my name is Erica Outlaw, and as a public school educator, I have concerns about American Classical Montgomery Charter opening this school within our community. First, I do believe that public school funds should be invested in the public school system already established and serving all the children in our community. My second concern is that American Classical Montgomery Academy will not even be an option for many families who are unable to provide transportation for their children. And so I just ask, is that truly serving all children of our community? Okay, and then there is a belief that if the local school boards approve charter school applications in their district, then that school board will maintain a tighter control of the operations of the charter school. But according to the Knox County School District, that simply isn't true, and unfortunately, they are finding out that is untruth the hard way. Okay, so governance is maintained through the corporation. And lastly, my concern is discipline of students with disabilities within this charter school. So when describing the formulation and administration of behavior and discipline code, the American Classical Academy of Montgomery 2023 application states that it is important that the school's discipline practices ensure a safe and effective learning environment for all students, okay? But it's aligned with the classical education program. But there is no mention of state and federal laws or the protection of the rights of students with disabilities when it comes to disciplinary actions, in which it was stated in their 2022 application. So I am just asking that you please just vote no for this charter school operation. We have great schools here in Clarksville, Montgomery County. Let's just continue to develop them. Thank you for your time.
I think it would be appropriate to check to see if Mr. Lenoir is here. Ms. Julie Discard. Or Jerry Britton. None of them showing. This session is done. We're gonna move on with our meeting now. Dr. Looney, surplus property miscellaneous, child nutrition, first reading.
Yes, so board policy requires all CMCSS property be declared surplus and salvaged by the Board of Education prior to the property's sale or disposal. The attached document in your packet contains the current list of child nutrition department equipment, small wares, or supplies currently housed at Central Office Warehouse that have reached the end of their service life. Therefore, it is requested the items listed be declared either surplus or salvage. In accordance with TCA 49-6-2007, we are recommending to the school board these items be declared surplus or salvage and sold by public auction through an online site which only serves government agencies, and all monies be issued back to Child Nutrition Department or disposed of in accordance with district policy and procedure.
Thank you. Next is GP 16 board meetings and agenda update, first read.
Yes, so in your packet you will find GP 16. This is just an updated version that includes the one formal and one study session that has been adapted for this year.
Thank you. Next is the 2023-2024 CMCSS consolidated budget, first read.
Yes, and I would like to welcome Chief Financial Officer Chris Renaud to present the proposed budget for 23-24.
Good evening, board. I'm excited to present this balanced budget on behalf of the CMCSS leadership and in recognition of all the hard work that the Business Affairs team did in compiling this information and presenting it for you today. And in your condensed packet that you should have received, I'll be happy to highlight some of the changes and some of the improvements that we're making with the additional revenues that we're receiving both through TISA and other various revenue streams. And please, as always, interrupt me anytime if you have any questions. So going over general purpose, which is the first of 6 of our funds, being the majority of our funds, you can see that we're going to forecast $398 million in revenue. We're forecasting budgeting expenses of $419 million, and we'll make up that unfavorable variance with our fund balance of $20.3 million. On revenues, you can see the largest portion of our revenue coming from the state, and that's through the new Tennessee Investment in Student Achievement, followed by our local revenue, some funds that we're going to absorb for computer leases, and as well as some small federal funds. And I'll go over all of those individually. Under revenue year-over-year changes, I'm excited to say that the new TISA funding formula has increased our revenue from the state by $36 million. We're also getting some additional revenue from the state for investment in our CTE programs. $11 million broken out. Each high school will receive an additional $1 million, and each middle school will be getting $500,000 to either improve their current vocational offerings or to offer additional academies at their schools. So, non-revenue sources, the increase, the change over last year by $11.5 million, is this is our large year for investment in computers. So that's accounting for the revenue that we'll take on. It'll be the debt that we'll absorb over a 4-year lease payment. And then again, working with their CFO for the county, we're forecasting a 4% increase in local option sales tax, and that's reflected by the $3.3 million increase in local revenue. And we do have a reduction in federal revenue that I'll highlight in a second. So under our local revenue, you can again see we're forecasting an increase of about $3.2 million. 3.3 of that is because of local sales tax. We are seeing some additional revenue from our dual enrollment program. And then again, the contribution and gifts, we're forecasting a lower revenue at this point because that'll be contributions and gifts that we get throughout the year. And it's very difficult to forecast that amount, but I always like to hedge in favor of positive variance throughout the year. Here I'm excited, you can see, as we mentioned before, the BEP program is no longer. It is now the Tennessee Investment in Student Achievement, and that's resulting in an additional $36 million funding from the state. Unfortunately with that though, we did lose some reduction in funding through our coordinated school health grants, our SRO grants, and our safe school aid grants, but those are intended to be included in the TISA increase in funding. And then there you can see we have an increase of $10 million in state vocational. That's for the Innovative School Models program that I mentioned earlier. And here we're forecasting $1 million reduction in federal revenue. That's primarily to our impact aid, and we're working on that's the response or the funding that we get based on the impact of Fort Campbell. We have seen a reduction in responses from our students and our parents, but we are working to address that and implementing some automation processes so that we can recover that amount in our next fiscal year. And then again, here you see the increase of $11.7 million. Again, that's just for the capital lease that I'll have to take to purchase more computers this year. And again, we're starting out with a healthy fund balance. That's why I have no concerns at this time with using $20 million of that to make up the difference between our revenue and expenses on our general purpose fund. So talking about expenses, $419 million in budgeted expenses. As I know you are acutely aware, 80% of that is our salaries and benefits. So closely followed by supplies and materials, and then equipment. So primarily computer purchases. So what departments are we spending the most money? As you can see, regular instruction, special education, office of the principal, operation of the plant, regular instruction support. Again, you can see that the largest part of our spending and focus is on local school funding. 91% to be exact. Which departments are we spending our biggest budgeting our biggest expenses in? Teachers, medical insurance benefits, we're investing heavily in educational assistance, retirement, instruction equipment, social security, instructional supplies and materials. Again, 90% of the budget going directly to the schools. So what am I asking for this year in this budget? We're looking at forecasting an increase of $17.2 million in new positions, which I'll highlight in my detailed sheets. The $11.8 million increase in computers. I am recommending a 4.5% COLA, and that I want to make sure that y'all understand that aligns and what that impact has to us as a district. One, it allows us to exceed the state requirement by fiscal year 2026 that teacher minimum salary is $46,000. We will be there. There will be no classified employee making less than permanent classified employee making less than $15 an hour. And then we're also increasing our substitute teacher pay to $15 an hour to make sure that we can retain those services at a more competitive rate. You also see an increase of $9.8 million for the innovative school models. We're forecasting a $5 million increase in non-salary and benefited items. Primarily, we're investing heavily, and I'll touch on those a little more. Additional funding, $800,000 for digital resources for our staff and students. And then we're also investing about $500,000 in expansion at Greenwood. And then I am recommending a step increase for those eligible employees, and that comes in at a cost of $4.1 million. So again, where are we increasing our spending by department? Regular instruction, vocational education, special education department, office of the principal, other student support, operation of the plant. So again, putting all this additional revenue back into the schools and back into our staff.
Hey Chris.
Yes, sir.
And since we're quiet, the 4.5% COLA increase, can you go over when we talk about in person, which by the way, I really appreciate you explaining this to me in person, about the increase that's been over the last 2 years for the district?
Just in the last 13 months, sir, you're looking at an average increase for all our team members of 15.5% because we did a step in a COLA that resulted in 4% July 1st. We did a 5% mid-year, and this results in the average team member of CMCSS getting a 6.5% raise. So if you total those all together, in 12 months, it'll be a 15.5% increase in compensation to our team members. So again, where are we increasing our spending? Teachers, instructional equipment, instructional supplies, materials. We're investing heavily in educational systems, and then all the benefits that are associated with those increases in compensation. So as I go by each individual department, you can see regular instruction, as I mentioned earlier, we're increasing by $25.6 million. Out of that $25.6 million, $11.7 million of that is through salaries. $6.1 million is we're converting our K-12 virtual school, which was federally funded. That is no longer a viable option, so we're converting that over to our district funding, as well as adding 38 staff for Kirkwood High. And that's came in at $6.1 million. A step in the COLA for our current staff that falls under this department is $5.6 million. Here you can see the $800,000 increase in digital resources, and then another additional $11.8 million investment in computers. Under alternative school, the easiest way, if you don't see them highlighted, that means that they're within the range that covers the step and COLA increase. You can see a 7% increase in salaries. That's covered primarily because of step, COLA, or market analysis. Special education, we're investing heavily an additional $8.4 million in our special education program. You can see we're adding 66 additional educational assistance resources. We're budgeting for 25 additional special populations teachers. And then we're also hiring an additional 10 speech language pathologists to support our students that need those services. And the step in the COLA comes in about $1.6 million. So vocational, again, investing heavily in our vocational programs, $11.1 million. The majority of that is through Kirkwood High. As y'all know, we're opening a new school. And so the teachers to support those positions out at Kirkwood High, the diesel program and the other CPU programs that we have out there. And then the step in the COLA coming in at $643,000, and then we are planning to budget $9.1 million on new supplies and materials for our vocational program. And then there is some staff development included in the innovative school model at $500,000 to build up the skill set among our CT staff. Student services marginally increased, primarily the step in COLA. Health services, you see an increase of $220,000. Market analysis, or step COLA market analysis was the biggest portion of that, and then you see $62,000 in new position. That's for the nurse to support Kirkwood High School. Other student support, we're increasing our expenses by $2.5 million. New positions, we're adding 8 counselors to support our staff and our schools, both at Kirkwood and at elementary, and as well as adding additional resources for a social worker. And then the COLA step and market analysis came in at $850,000. And then, as y'all are well aware, we're kicking off middle school sports. So there was identified a need to add athletic trainers to make sure that we're protecting those students and supporting them through middle school athletics. And that's $155,000. Regular instruction, we're adding $1.4 million. We're adding 4 academic coaches that were federally funded. We've identified that they're a critical aspect to our student success, so we'll be transferring those to district funding. And then Kirkwood High's support roles are coming in at $180,000, and the step COLA market analysis at $800,000. Alternative school, there you just see the biggest increases. We're transitioning from 1.5 employees to 2 full-time employees to support our adult education and alternative school. Special education support, we're adding $1 million. The biggest portion of that, we're adding 5 additional psychologists. We're budgeting for 5 additional psychologists to support our special populations, as well as adding occupational therapists and occupational therapist assistants. And then the rest of it is step COLA market analysis adjustment. Vocational education support, we're just going to contract some services and support for the innovative school model, and that's coming in at $650,000. Technology, marginal increase. Technology classroom, marginal increase. Adult education support, that's a step in COLA, covering most of that increase. Board of Education, we have an increase of $520,000. $330,000 of that is employee benefits going up. That's disability insurance and retiree benefits, costing us, we're forecasting an additional cost of $330,000. As you get more revenue, you have to give their trustee their part of their commission, so we're forecasting an increase of $170,000 for the trustees commission, and then we're forecasting an increase in criminal background checks of $60,000. Director of Schools, marginal increase. Printing and communications. We've identified that there's a big need to support our schools through both printing and marketing and communications. And so we're not only adding additional resources to support that, we're adding a marketing specialist that will work with each school individually to help facilitate their communications, identify marketing opportunities. But we're also investing in our mini Kinkos that's over there in the corner. So we're adding a large capacity printer as well as resources to support that so that we can better support our school in their printing, marketing, and communication needs. And that does include social media, just so you know. And then additional marginal increase in staff development. Office of the Principal, we're increasing $2.7 million. We're adding some additional AP resources, both for elementary as well as transitioning K-12 virtual from federally funded to district funded, and then the administration at both Kirkwood High School, and believe it or not, right after that, we're opening another school, Kirkwood Elementary, so we'll bring that staff on mid-year to support the opening of that school. Business Affairs, I'm costing y'all an extra $500,000, adding some additional resources as with new federal funding, with new TISA funding and reporting guidelines. We're adding resources to support that and make sure that we're compliant to the federal and state fiscal reporting as I'll get over in a second, explain that they're aggressively increasing that, and also as we wrap up ARP funding, ESSER-related funds, ELC, the reporting requirements of those for the next 3 to 5 years. Adding an additional procurement resources. We have 2 people that manage about $80 million worth of procurement for the entire district. So adding resources to support that. You know, probably know we're also getting heavy into contracts with spending with ESSER relief funding and federal funding as well. So, and then adding an additional accounting technician. I have increased our staff development. There's a lot of new federal programs coming out. There's a lot of opportunities. I'm increasing this budget with the intention that we will get grant money to pay for those. But in the event that some federal team accountants still need to go to those meetings, so I'm including that in the budget. But again, my intent is to get those funded through grants. Textbook processing and distribution, marginal change, that's the step in COLA. Human resources is increasing by about $400,000. We are adding a benefits associate and a safety and health administration assistant at $142,000. Step COLA market analysis came in at $133,000. And then we also are forecasting increases. Y'all are probably aware, we're expanding our scope and reach and breadth on the trying to teachers that we're trying to acquire, and some of those require additional resources to support them in getting their teacher licensure. So we're budgeting to cover those costs and support them in the transition from private industry to teaching. Operation of the plant, you're seeing an increase of $2.1 million. Most of that is salary, $1.1 million. The largest portion of that is the custodial staff at Kirkwood High School, and then we're also adding some environmental. We're transitioning some of our team members into certified environmental technicians to help us deal with emergency operations of our 47, 48 locations. Supplies and materials, you'll see approximately $550,000 set aside and allocated for the expansion of Greenwood. We understand there's an opportunity to better serve our students there, and so we're identifying opportunities. We've been given the opportunity to take a large portable from Fort Campbell, and so we'll retrofit that, install electric, install plumbing, and that can become an additional resource to support the Greenwood campus. And then we are forecasting an increase in our building and grounds insurance premiums. As again, we're bringing on Kirkwood High and Kirkwood Elementary as well as an operations center out there as well. Maintenance of the plants, we're adding some additional painters, HVAC technicians to support us with all the ESSER-funded HVAC installations and modifications, as well as equipment operators to support the Kirkwood campus as well. And we are forecasting an additional need for resources and equipment for the Kirkwood campus. Early childhood education, marginal increase again, that's primarily the step COLA. No changes to debt service and interfund transfer. I'm not anticipating any additional transfers to any other different funds. And I do forecast it to come out above the required minimum for fund balance, allowing us to also hedge for inflation as well as any recessionary pressures that will impact our state or local revenue forecasts that we have in our budget. Any questions on general purpose? All right, now the fun ones. You ready? Federal, I just want to forecast we are seeing a reduction in federal funding by $47 million. And believe it or not, that's a good thing. IDA, we're forecasting just, again, I won't know those numbers till June, so we're just going to hedge on the lower side so that we don't over budget and be in a situation that we have to transfer funds from another fund to cover our increase in expenses. But what I wanna highlight is you see an $11 million in ESSER 2.0. And what that means is, or that we're spending the money that we're supposed to, and on these federal funds that are associated with American Rescue Plan, or COVID funding, if you don't spend it, you lose it. And so we're forecasting to spend all the funds in the timeline that we've been allocated to meet those requirements and commitments. And as y'all know, we've heavily invested in capital projects, we've invested in resources to support our transition out of COVID into this new phase. And so we are forecasting a reduction in ESSER by $12 million, expending all those funds. The deadline for that is June 30th, so we are on track to spend all those funds. We are spending a significant portion of our ESSER 3.0. That funding will be required to be expended by the end of next fiscal year. And the good thing is with only having $16 million, that puts us way ahead of many districts in the state as far as spending the ESSER funding. Because again, if you don't spend it, you have to give it back to the state, who has to give it back to the U.S. Treasury, and they don't like to do that. And
Excuse me, is ESSER paying for the addition at Barksdale and/or is the immersion?
no, ESSER is funding that, sir. We have used ESSER dollars to fund that, as well as East Montgomery as well, sir.
Additional?
There are 12 classroom expansions that we've done, sir. And then ELC is part of the American Rescue Plan. We have to have those funds expended by June 30th, and the good thing is we have a plan, and we're on track to expend all those funds. So that's why this is good to see this reduction in our federal funding, because that means we're using the money as we should, how we should. But the big thing about federal funding, as y'all know, is whatever money I get in, we need to budget to spend. So we're forecasting to bring in $39 million. You can, we do have a fund balance, this board approved. As y'all know, on the federal funds, we have to spend the money first and request reimbursement. So we have an $8 million balance that we can use to cover those funds, until we get reimbursement. At the conclusion of all of our relief funding, that money will go back to general purpose, just so y'all are aware. Well, I may keep some to fund other federal projects, but the majority of it will go back to general purpose funding. But you can see the expenses by department, but the big thing that you want to double check me on is you'll see my total expenditures come out to $39 million. So we have a balanced budget to spend the revenues that we're receiving, and we have expenses identified and budgeted for those revenues. Child nutrition budget. Any other questions about federal? Okay. Child nutrition budget. Only thing changing the revenue, we're forecasting a $500,000 reduction in breakfast reimbursement from the federal government. We hope that doesn't happen, but we like to hedge on the side of favorability for the organization. What you'll see is we are reducing our expenses. We do have an increase with the cafeteria personnel for Kirkwood High School under cafeteria personnel, but we are forecasting a reduction in food purchases, not in our food service, but for food purchases. We are forecasting a reduction in non-food supplies and materials, and we've had a surplus of USDA dollars. We've invested in a lot of equipment for our schools and replenishing and refurbishing our food service equipment, and so we don't anticipate the need to spend as much as prior years budgeted for food service equipment, and our fund balance exceeds the minimum requirement of the USDA for operations, so it's a healthy budget. Transportation budget, we are forecasting an increase in revenue. Again, $1.4 million of that is through TISA. We are forecasting an increase in property taxes by $300,000. But the largest portion you can see is the Tennessee Investment TISA funding that we allocate from general purpose to cover our transportation services. We do have an increase in expenses in the transportation budget. As y'all are aware, we're opening an operations center out at Kirkwood campus. It'd be very difficult to operate that if you did not have mechanics to service it. So we're allocating 3 mechanics for Kirkwood campus. Even though we have open bus drivers positions, I highly anticipate with the increase in compensation that we're proposing for this year's budget that we're gonna fill those. So I'd rather have some additional open positions so that we can make sure we don't turn anybody away for bus driving opportunities. Other staff, we are adding some additional support roles for our transportation department: supervisor, assistant supervisor, coordinator, and parts clerk. And then the step colon market analysis for our bus aids budget line was $750,000. We have added an additional $173,000 to cover middle school athletic trips, as well as added some additional funding to make sure that we cover those non-athletic activities, band, choir, chorus, things like that, to support them extracurricular activities as well as school activities. As y'all probably felt it at the pump, there has been an increase in fuel costs. So we are budgeting an increase in diesel of $425,000, gasoline at $225,000, and there is a marginal increase for propane as well. As you know, those are the 3 types of buses that we operate. While we are trying to secure funding for electronic buses, we're just not there yet. And again, fund balance. Inflation is killing us on buses. The same amount of buses last year cost us $1.7 million. Those same amount of buses are going to cost us $2.1 million this year. There's been a 25% increase in the cost of buses due to the supply chain and as well as a surge in demand for those resources. And then again, fund balance is reducing by $2.6 million, still exceeding the state minimum requirement for fund balance and transportation.
Chris, how many buses are we anticipating in swapping out?
15? Yes, sir. They're about 130,000, 135,000 a piece, so I think it's 15 was the last number I got.
Chris, I need you to go back to page 2 through 43 and
Sure.
go back over them again.
You know I will.
Just a little bit slower. No. The SROs, they come out of the Montgomery County Sheriff's Department budget.
Yes, sir, but you might be aware there's legislation that they're trying to propose to fund that through state funding, and what'll happen in that, the Montgomery County Sheriff does pay, but any additional funding that I get from the state for those resources, I pass straight on through to the Montgomery County Sheriff's Department.
Thank you.
All right, extended school budget. Just like the federal, you wanna make sure whatever revenues I'm getting, $1.658 million, I'm budgeting, again, we're still working on getting our forecast finalized for that, and this again will just cover through July, because June of this year will be covered under this fiscal year budget and what we've allocated it for. So this is just for operations, just for the month of July, because the good thing is our extended school splits fiscal years, so we have to make sure that we budget accordingly. But $1.658 million, and I've got budgeted balance to spend $1.658 million. So last but not least, I know you are disappointed, right? Capital projects. We will meet with the county commission, the budget committee, and I'm requesting $5.4 million. What that's primarily for is roofs, our structures, roofs for our schools, a lot of our schools. They're exceeding the 20 to 25 year life expectancy of those roofs, and unfortunately the latest storm that we had has only exacerbated the deterioration of those roofs. So we'll be looking to work on schools like Kenwood High. We're going to look at Burt Elementary roof restoration, Beers Garden Elementary roof restoration. Kenwood has an antiquated fire alarm system, so we're requesting funding to replace and update that to prevent any future issues. We also have a main electrical switchgear that is on its last leg at Barksdale, so we're requesting additional funding to support transitioning that out. And then there's some system-wide, those things included, and they're in your packet. Things like, there is some in there for ADA, there's in there for Kenwood track replacement. There's also addressing some of the structural parking lot needs that we have throughout the district system-wide. And then again, requesting additional funding for Rossby High's roof, Northeast High's roof, New Providence Middle School roof, and Minglewood Elementary roof. I think that's the last one. So, any questions?
You did a great job.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you, sir. The next item on the county commissioners, do you have any questions, any comments?
We'll address it in break.
But I have one more presentation.
Oh, okay.
Trying to get rid of it. This one will be brief. So, to make y'all aware, there's been a new requirement from the Tennessee Department of Education regarding any federal budget amendments in the current fiscal year. So we've had some federal budget amendments included in your packet. I have included details on these, so I'm just gonna give you the high level. And again, this is just a compliance requirement from the Tennessee Department of Education, that the Board of Education reviews and approves any federal budget amendments. So what typically happens, as y'all are probably aware, is if we get more money, I have to allocate that money somewhere. So here you see any revenue increases that we have, you'll see in your packet that we have offsetting expenses, and then 90% of the time, it's just all about moving the money to a different fund within that particular federal grant. So you'll see over here that we've moved around $9,000 in our IDEAP. APIN, we've moved around $136,000. You'll see a lot of the biggest movements are ESSER 3.0, ESSER 2.0, as we're trying to shift. We lean heavily on capital projects based on supply chain issues, both with raw materials and contractors. We're not going to be able to expend those funds, so we'll move it into a different account so that we can make sure that we spend those funds and not lose them and have to give them back to the state. So again, all the details of each individual movement, even within our title programs, I've included I think a 6-page list that'll detail all individual budget amendments. And so at this time, or at the formal session, I'll request that you approve these budget amendments. And that's it.
Are you sure?
I'm positive.
Now, County Commissioner, do you have any comments? Yes, board members? Charlie?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to thank Chris and his team for their hard work. I know you just didn't do it overnight. And look forward to the way you present it to the county budget. And I know you have a good working relationship with them and appreciate the good work.
And no, we are not quiet. We're not talking because Chris was kind to meet with us, those that wanted to meet with him one-on-one. And I thank him for that.
Okay, Mr. Nelson?
I want to thank you for mentioning Kenwood and that track. There have been lots of people who've been interested in that because they currently can't even meet the TSSAA requirements to hold the track meet. So I'm glad that you're getting that taken care of this year.
Mr. McMillan?
I echo that. As you know, we talked about this at Kenwood track, and I was out there for flag football, and I thought, wow, this needs to be fixed. So you already had it in there, so I really appreciate that. I just want to give a big shout out to the girls wrestling. Y'all know my daughter's on Clarksville team, and she's back there somewhere behind the pillar. She can't see me, probably on purpose. And I'm very proud of that whole team out there. I do want to address the board for a moment. This past week, I received an email that was sent to my colleagues here on the board, and it was accidentally sent to me. The email accused me of working with our charter school applicant to recruit students, and in short, was asking my colleagues on the board to have me recused of being able to vote for the charter school applicant at the end of the month. The accusation stems from page 117 of the charter school application. It's 600 pages, so it's a great read if you want to spend some time. But where the applicant said they would seek out community service organizations like Community Action Agency, and then they wrote, or Mosaic Church, which if you don't know is the church in which I pastor at, to increase awareness of the unique approach to K-12 public education. So I say all this to the board, to everyone here, to be very transparent. I had not ever read that line in this application until I received the email. I would venture to say that most of my colleagues here on the board have not read all 600 pages of this document. I've read most of the document, but I definitely skipped the section on how to recruit students because I just thought they were going to recruit students. So I didn't really read into that. There is a board review, or there's a district review committee that Dr. Vedder recommended the people on the committee, and they came together. They have reviewed this application, and they're going to make a recommendation to us next week at the meeting, and I invite you all to be with us at 6 o'clock. If approved, it would, sorry, that's a different one. From this line in the application, there was an assumption that was made by some political organizations who were spreading this information that Mosaic Church was working with American Classical Academy in Montgomery to find students for the school. I can assure everyone that Mosaic Church has never been approached by the charter school applicant to find students for them now, in the past, or in the future, and would not even assist in this matter. We are simply a church. We are a very diverse church with very diverse opinions in our community. Our vision is to make disciples and release ministers. finding students for public schools does not really fit within that vision. Well, on the other hand, though, I wanted to say that we have given tens of thousands of dollars to specifically Northwest High School here in our district through direct payment and through volunteer service projects. We even received the Community Commitment Award before I was on the board back in 2020 from Clarksville Montgomery County Schools. The only connection the Charter School applicant has with Mosaic Church comes from me previously being on the board, and that was when they asked Tommy Vlahos, who was the pastor at our church, if they could have and hold a meeting last year to answer questions at our church. They had one at Tinglewood House, and they decided to have one at the church. This was not directed to the staff, this was not directed to my pastor. In fact, he informed him about all this today for the first time. He had no idea. This was not set up by anyone on our staff, but through Mr. Vlahos, who made the connection. This is not uncommon for Mosaic to hold community events because we're the largest building to do so in North Clarksville. For example, we have had former city councilman, by the way, it's great to see you, Councilwoman. Yes, it's great to see you. It was on Vondell Richmond, who was a former councilman on the city council, and Ward 2 held a Ward 2 meeting there. The Chamber of Commerce held their power breakfast for the Clarksville Montgomery County School System last year at the church. TCAT will hold their graduation this Thursday at Mosaic, and Northwest High School will hold its athletic award banquet in May at the church. The conversation is a short one and would be easily dispelled if anyone would have made an attempt to reach out to myself at the church questioning it. However, I do want to say this. If it was true, I could proudly proclaim it here on the day of the vote. I could tell everyone here, disclose it, and still have a vote. So because of that simple reason, it's very truly not true. I'm being very transparent with everyone on the board and you here today. I wanted to make it clear that since being in office, I've never publicly shared my thoughts on charter schools, and I've only sought to have community feedback. Because from those living here in our great city, the reason I speak about this tonight is to bring transparency because truth matters to me deeply. Lastly, I want to say to everyone on our board here that we stand united as one. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate the outreach and support from every board member here that I served with since I took office in August. Now we are 7 very different people with different opinions. And I'm certain in the future we're not going to see eye to eye on everything. But I do not question anyone on this board that has anything but the best for me personally. I thank them for their support thus far on the board, and I look forward to continuing to have conversations as we're going through the rest of this month about charter schools. Thank you.
Have any other?
I do have a question. We're fixing the track at Kenwood High, and that's wonderful. But presently, to my knowledge, Northeast High School does not have a track. So is there anything proposed for Northeast to have a track in the future?
I'll have to look at our capital plan. I don't know that right now. Ms. Berry, but I'll be glad to get you that information.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Again, we'd like to thank you guys for all of your presentations. As always, they're done with finesse and class. Thank you. Dr. Lumen?
Good evening, board members. First, a quick reminder, state testing begins next Monday. We are excited for our students to demonstrate all the growth made this year. Also, April is the month of the military child. Don't forget to wear purple on Wednesday, April 19th for Purple Up. As someone with 4 children who have had to endure multiple cross-country moves and deployments, I will be wearing purple to show my support for all of CMCSS military students. As you heard this evening, we have proposed a 4.5% cost of living increase for the 23-24 school year. Our message to employees has consistently been a commitment to be the best school system to attend and work in the state of Tennessee. While competitive pay and excellent benefits are only one part of this equation, we're also committed to building a positive work climate. The second iteration of the Upbeat survey has been deployed to all school-based employees. We will continue to encourage everyone to complete that and then deconstruct this data to highlight best practices while also continuing to find areas of opportunity. I truly believe our best recruitment strategy is a retention-first mindset. Our students deserve to have the best educators, administrators, and support staff surrounding them daily. I also want to thank all board members for continuing to be strong advocates for the school system. Finally, I do want to remind everyone of the age-appropriate materials policy and procedure that is on the CMCSS website. We welcome our community in helping put our students first and work to be better together. Mr. Garland, this concludes my report for the evening.
This meeting is adjourned.